Hello, you multi. Multifarious, I think it's furious. Monographic Muse. There you go. Thank you, Laurie, for the malt mention. I'm Ralphie, sitting in the bothy with an empty glass and a bottle of whiskey, which can only mean one thing. We are proceeding with another review here on the channel, the Whiskey Bothy, as it's now called, because YouTube have moved the goalposts. So it's a long story, and I won't bore you with the details. But I'm going to be reviewing in Ralphie Review 1045 a delightful blended Scotch. It's a malt Scotch, not to be confused with a blended Scotch, which is a combination of malt and grain. But this is what used to be called pure malt. And in fact, if they called it malt blend, it would make a lot more sense than calling it blended malt. But that is the way of the Scotch whisky industry. It's not just confusing names, and it's not just some confusing practices. It's some confusing titles for different spirits. But in a way, it makes it more interesting to navigate it all. It makes for a more interesting journey. And one of the most important journeys is, of course, the smell and the taste of what's in the bottles we buy. And one of the primary missions of my channel here is to share my experience, and rather than give you expertise in the traditional sense, I'm simply giving you experience and just sharing my journey to help you, maltmates, with your journey. So I've just poured a glass. As you can see, we're looking at the colour here, which is relatively light. Compared to many blended Scotch whiskies you'll see in the shelves of shops, this is really quite restrained in colour because it's natural. It's also unchill filtered, by the way. It's also a minimum of 8 years old. It's a blend of malts. It's called SRV5, and it's bottled by the Thompson brothers, who are the proprietors of... Give me a second. Where's my steampunker? I've given it a clean, by the way. I've given it a thorough wash. No, you're not getting up. Stay down. Stay down. Here. There's your treats. Go away. I'm busy. There's your treats. And don't come back for seconds, or you'll get a smacked fluffy bottom. Dornoch. I mean, there's so many distilleries to choose from, but I have a very small distillery. But as this company, Thompson Brothers, they're actually more independent bottlers than they are distillers, to be honest, when you look at the range of what's available. They're bottling some good stuff, and you're frequently seeing some very good value bottlings for them, which again, I commend them for being such a small company with relatively high overheads. But they are very well, the two brothers that run this company are very well connected within the industry. And certainly that does give you some advantages, along with their consistently hard work. Just give me a sec. Put the steampunker out the way. I will be using it again shortly. SRVS means Solera Reserve Vatting. Now it's Vatting number 5. So basically what they do is they have a big wooden container like a washback, and they pour their whiskey into it, and they let that whiskey marry together with other whiskies. And then they remove some of it before adding more to top it up. Now, this is a common practice in the production of sherry, but it's relatively unusual now with Scotch whisky. And the huge advantage of doing this is the quality of the marrying of the spirits together. Because when you just put two spirits together suddenly without resting them and allowing them to mingle, what you tend to do is get the clash of two spirits, because they won't bond immediately. So what have we got on the nose here? Light, clean, very old school, beautiful, soft, relatively intense barley sugar, and the quality of maturation for 8+ years, I have to say, is very, very good. I'm also getting on the nose just a little drop of peatiness, just a hint, and I'm pretty sure it's Caol Ila. So this is a vatting of single malts, creating a malt blend, which the industry calls blended malt, which is, because it's cheaper to buy, frankly, compared to single malts, can be then put by the producer into the market at a cheaper price. And meanwhile, traditional Scotch whisky fans, who are absolute slaves to single malt nomination, right? So if it's a single malt, it must be good, are overlooking the fact that there is a category of whiskies out there which are a combination of 1, 2 or more malts from different distilleries, in other words, malt blends, and they think, well, it can't be as good. And they're wrong. And I'll tell you another reason they're wrong, because you go out there in the UK, and I'm giving UK prices because I can't really give US prices because there's a 25% import tariff on all Scotch whisky going into the US at the moment as part of a market protection exercise to help with the sale of bourbon. I'm sure you're aware of that. But this is bottled at 48.5%. And you can buy a bottle of this in the UK for round about £30 to £32 a bottle. And I'm telling you right now, that's damn good value. It seriously is. And I've not even tasted the whisky yet. So let's have a taste. Neat. Youthful, but rounded. Clear signs of proactive maturation. In other words, active casks were used in the maturation of the whisky. You might be wondering, does any further maturation come from the Solera cask itself? And the fact is, it will be nominal and it will be minimal. There will be some, but primarily the purpose of the Solera cask is to facilitate the marrying and the bonding of the contributory spirits that are going into it. I'm going to add a drop of water now because, see, neat, it's slightly, I would call it flinty, slightly mineralated, and slightly dry and crisp. And I'm going to add 2 teaspoonfuls of water because I drink my whisky like a master blender tries their samples, noses their samples. You need the water to cut down the alcohol. And sure, you can say I've got a bottle at 40%. They've already done it for me, but frankly, some of the flavour's lost in that process. And it's when you add it to higher strength whiskies or at the moment that you actually get a far more dynamic release of the locked up flavours from the alcohol, the ethanol itself. It's just the way it works, malt mates. So I've added 2 teaspoonfuls, which is 10 millilitres of water. I'm rolling the whisky round the side of the glass. I'm seeing good viscous coat lines, a coat curtain inside the glass. Again, this tells me something about the quality of the whisky and its calibre of maturation. I really do think there's several casks in here that are older than 8 years and that they are lifting the other contributing malts. I'm pretty sure of it. But back to the nose. Completely unpeated, fresh, lemony, zesty, light cereal, soft biscuits, restrained vanilla. There's a little hint of sherry going on in there, but it's quite subdued. Do you know what's called a session? Do you know what a session drama is? A session drama is one of these dramas where you're really there for the conversation and the companion happens to be whiskey, rather than being there for the whiskey and your companions happen to be conversation. It's a kind of role reversal thing. But as a session drama, this is excellent because you can carry on your conversation and enjoy something which is relatively simple and straightforward, but of pretty good quality and very good value. So a little bit of Scotch mist starting to slowly appear in this glass. It hasn't taken long. It's unchill filtered. It's natural colour. I'm going to go to the back of the label and tell you a bit more about this. Here we go. The blended malt, this blended malt is composed of carefully chosen single malt whiskies. They have all been aged for more than 8 years before being combined and rested in a 1,200 litre European oak vat. This Solera vat is never fully emptied and steampunkers steaming up. And each batch is left to gently integrate with the whisky reserved from the previous batch. Once ready, whisky is drawn from the Solera vat and slowly diluted to an eminently quaffable 48.5% ABV. It is then bottled without chill filtration and no colouring added. Now, there's something on this label I want to draw your attention to that you very rarely see in a whisky label, and that is the statement that it is slowly diluted. Why didn't they just say diluted? Because they could. All whisky's diluted unless it's absolute cask strength. Even some cask strength whiskies can be diluted just simply to make them more palatable and accessible. But this is the slow dilution. When you add all your diluting water at once to a whisky, it shocks it. This is why when we add water to our whiskies, it is for a moment shocked, but it will then recover. Now, this is just a small glass of whisky, but can you imagine a massive big vat of whisky and suddenly you're adding how many gallons of water to it? It's really going to shake up the whisky and disturb the whisky that's inside gently, maturing, which hasn't had a shock like that since it was put into the vat and then left alone. So this slow dilution means that they're adding the water incrementally. They're doing it gradually to bring the strength down gradually to what is, I have to say, a very generous bottling strength, 48.5. They could have brought it down to 46. Why did they leave it 48.5? Simple. To deliver the flavour, to deliver the experience. Because these guys, basically, they're in no hurry. They know they're firmly consolidating their reputation. They know, we know, it's completely free advertising for them, not a penny in marketing, because the marketing is in the calibre of what is bottled. So in other words, it's the very antithesis and opposite of what you get from the large corporations. And there you have it. Final taste before the malt mark. Much more fruity now. A little bit sweets coming in. Lemon, grapefruit rind, melon, papaya. Lovely, soft, integrated papaya. A little bit of gooseberry, a little bit of kiwi fruit. So we're looking at the kind of yellow stroke green fresh fruit field of view in terms of flavour range. There's something a little bit spicy and a little bit peaty, a little bit crisp that's topping it all off in the aftertaste. And I think there's a little bit of Caol Ila in there. But that's just my personal opinion. What do I know? I'm going to give you a malt mark for this. And bear in mind, this is a malt blend. Right. I know they say blended malt, but blended malt can get so easily confused with blended Scotch because blended Scotch contains blended malts. Right? So what will I give this? I'm going to give this a very potable 82 out of 100. I'm not just giving this mark for the flavour. I'm giving it for the entire delivery of the bottle. Importantly, I'm giving it for the value of for money. At £32 a bottle, you're getting a lot of whiskey for your cash. And that really matters to us now more than ever before. So there you have it. Now, I will shortly be bringing you Ralphie Review 1045 Extras. And I will be talking about one of my Patreon subscribers' experiences with a courier delivery of whiskey. And I want to tell you about it and share it with you. I think you'll find it really quite interesting because it's a thing that happens not very often, but you need to really be methodical if it happens to you about how you go about resolving the issue. And I'm going to share a Pat Pal, I call them. Terror Tower is his name, and I'm going to share Terror Tower's story. Stick around, mock mates.